When we think about the year 2013 in hip-hop, one of the most consistent trends we're going to remember is the Drake stimulus package. If you don't know what the Drake stimulus package is when Drake blesses one of your favorite rappers with a hook or a verse on a song that basically gives them a release date or prevents their album from going double styrofoam.
10 years later.
The Drake stimulus package right now doesn't exist.
So guys, you know when the OVO Commander-in-Chief DJ Akademiks gives a criticism on Drake, then it's probably a valid one, and recently he came out and declared that the Drake stimulus package is dead. Now, the Drake stimulus package is when, like Drake said, he hops on your song and makes the feature Drake featuring Drake, meaning that he bodies the whole song, makes it a hit. I mean, he was giving guys like Makonnen and Blocboy Jb full-fledged careers just off one verse. But it seems like those days are far behind us, and Drake is hanging up his jersey, retiring from his career in the emergency room, helping rappers resuscitate their careers when they're on life support. So all those magic melodies he was handing out to rappers like they were unemployment checks at the welfare office. Yeah, well, it looks like those checks are bouncing back right now, and the days where Drake just hops on your song and makes it a hit are far behind us. After Kendrick handing Drake the biggest L he's ever taken in his career, it seems like the value of a Drake feature today is not what it was before this beef. Even Akademiks pointed this out.
I think Drake's wings feel clipped. The Drake stimulus package right now doesn't exist. So Drake going on Camila Cabello's track didn't do nothing.
However, what Akademiks and most people don't realize is that the Drake stimulus has been dead for a while now, arguably for the last decade. Now, we're going to jump into why the Drake feature was once so powerful and no longer is today, but just to put things into perspective of where Drake is at in his career, for one of the first times in history, Kendrick Lamar has surpassed Drake in monthly listeners on Spotify, showing that today he might not be the most listened to or dominant rapper within the game. And in an even more historic turn of events, the last 4 features that Drake has hopped on with people like Sexy Red or Camila Cabello, all of those tracks failed to hit the top 50 of the Billboard charts, which is what prompted DJ Akademiks to say that a Drake feature today does not mean anything. But why was the Drake feature so important? I mean, sure, he's one of the biggest rappers of all time, and getting a rapper of that magnitude on your song is obviously a huge look for you. But there's been massive rappers before him like Eminem, Kanye West, 50 Cent, Jay-Z, who never had that magic of being able to snap their fingers like Thanos and create a massive mainstream rapper out of thin air just from one verse. For example, back when Kanye was an unknown rapper, he appeared on Jay-Z's album The Blueprint 2 in 2002, but it still took him over a year to build up his own name and drop his own album. Meanwhile, guys like Makonnen or The Weeknd or Migos were able to kickstart their entire careers on a global level just by having a collaboration with Drake. So to understand why the Drake stimulus package is dead today, we have to understand why it was so important to begin with. And to do that, we have to take a deeper look at the guy who made it all possible for Drake to have the success that he has, and to hand out features to unknown artists like their lottery tickets. Because before there was the Drake stimulus package, or really before Drake even existed, there was the Lil Wayne stimulus package. And if you guys think Drake did damage to the game, like in a good way, then we gotta study what Lil Wayne did before him, because hip-hop had never seen something like this before. See, before there was Drake breaking all these sales records, we had Weezy F Baby, who was on a tear from like 2005 to 2011, selling 1 million copies in the first week, multiple times, and dishing out hooks and verses to artists way smaller than him, giving them the biggest hits of their careers. So the stimulus package was invented in around 2005-2006, when Lil Wayne hopped on like over 30 features. Even Kanye got on a song with him and rapped, "It's a song with Wayne, so you know it's gonna melt, but you're not gonna murder me like everybody else. I'm gonna rap like I have some type of respect for myself." Showing that when Wayne hopped on your song, it basically became his, and the first big example we saw of this was the song Fat Joe by Make It Rain. Make It Rain by Fat Joe, where Wayne blessed Joe with one of the most legendary hooks of all time. I believe he also coined the term Make It Rain. I mean, he did this a lot, right? Even on his features in the 90s, like on songs like Back That Thing Up, Wayne was the first person to popularize the term Drop It Like It's Hot, or the song Bling Bling, where Wayne basically invented a term, Bling Bling, that ended up making it into the dictionary. So when your features are so good that they coin terms that end up making it into the dictionary, you know that you're working with something special here. You're working with a beast. And that's exactly what Wayne was. I mean, in 2006, he dropped Make It Rain with Fat Joe. That's a classic track, but we really, let's be real, only remember that song for the hook that Wayne did on it. And that hook gave Fat Joe the first platinum song that he had in 4 years. Then he went on to give DJ Khaled legendary verses like they were arcade tickets. And this was before the God did DJ Khaled. This was like a relatively unknown DJ Khaled. And Wayne gave him some of his first hits, songs like Holla At Me, Brown Paper Bag, and the show-stopping performance he had on We Taking Over, where he destroyed 5 different rappers with one 30-second verse. And that song became the biggest hit of DJ Khaled's career at the time, hitting 28 on the Billboard charts. He also gave Birdman, the owner of his record label / mentor / daddy, I guess. But yeah, for the short time that Birdman was a rapper, Wayne gave him the biggest hits of his career, songs like Pop Bottles or Stunt Like My Daddy. He also attempted to revive Ja Rule's career after the legendary L that Ja Rule took to 50 Cent in their beef, but even a Lil Wayne feature couldn't save Ja Rule's career at the time. But Lil Wayne didn't stop at just reviving careers, he was also creating careers at the time. Back in 2007, 2 Chainz used to go by Titty Boy, and he was actually part of a group called Play His Circle. To put into perspective how much smaller 2 Chainz was at the time, his album with Play His Circle sold only 26,000 copies in the first week, whereas 2 Chainz' first album as a solo artist sold over 200,000 copies in the first week. So 2 Chainz was a relatively unknown artist, and at the time, he was boys with Lil Wayne, so Lil Wayne blessed him with a hook on the song Duffel Bag Boys, and that hook catapulted 2 Chainz into stardom, hitting 15 on the Billboard charts. And it was Wayne's presence on that song alone that made the song as big as it was. He laid out the blueprint for guys like Drake to make a song a massive hit just based off their hook or their verse alone. But Wayne took a bit of a different approach. See, while he was revolutionizing the way that an artist should approach a feature verse, he also revolutionized the mixtape game, as he dropped a bunch of free projects where he would just rap over other people's beats. And while these weren't necessarily feature verses, Wayne would basically hop on your beat and he would make that beat his own, to the point where you would forget about the original artist's version of the track and you only tuned in for Lil Wayne's version. I mean, there's multiple examples of this. Go look up Sky's the Limit by Lil Wayne. That song has like 50 million views on YouTube. And that was a remix to a song called Mr. Jones by Mike Jones, which only has 1.5 million views on YouTube. And it didn't stop there. His version of songs like Ice Cream Paint Job, Swag Surfing, and Wasted all have more views than the original versions of those songs. So Wayne showed you basically that if he wasn't going to hop on your own song and make it his, he was just going to remix your song and make it his. And if you never checked out his mixtapes, I highly suggest you listen to The Drought 3. He has a song on there called I Can't Feel My Face, which uses the beat of the track Everlasting Bass, which is the same beat that Metro sampled on the song Like That, where Kendrick Lamar basically tore Drake up. And the Lil Wayne stimulus package didn't stop there. It extended over to his artists Drake and Nicki Minaj, who were unknown at the time and got their first hits by having Wayne feature on their records. And it didn't take long for the two to take Lil Wayne's blueprint and run with it by going on and having their own insane feature runs. Nicki actually had the stimulus package before Drake, where she went on to spit incredible verses on songs like My Chick Bad by Ludacris, Bottoms Up by Trey Songz, and copying her mentor Lil Wayne's strategy of destroying like 4 rappers on one song, where she obliterated Kanye West, Rick Ross, and Jay-Z with her verse on the song Monster. But it was really the Drake feature that stood out the most. And Lil Wayne knew by signing Drake, he adopted a cash cow, and he could retire his jersey as the king of the feature stimulus package by just letting Drake adopt that role. I mean, Wayne even knew it back in 2009 where he rapped, "We're gonna be alright if we put Drake on every single hook," showing the world early on that he's gonna be able to just kick his feet up while Drake does features and make hits almost as easily as you make eggs in the morning. And from there it was just over. Starting in 2009, Drake spawned up dozens and dozens of features and hits every single year. And what's interesting and what really makes the Drake stimulus package stand out is that he elevated his mentor Lil Wayne's strategy of hopping on your song and making it his, or remixing your song and making it his. And he actually merged those two strategies by not just featuring on a record or making a remix to a record, but instead Drake started hopping on tracks that he thought were hot but were relatively unknown at the time and just putting his own verse on them. Now this started on his album Take Care, where he took a bunch of the Weeknd's records and either ended up putting his own verse on them or just taking the song flat out completely. And while the Weeknd could say whatever he wants about Drake stealing a lot of his records for Take Care, it was his appearances on that album on songs like Crew Love that introduced him to the mainstream world. And throughout the next few years, Drake consistently continued doing this. In 2013, the Migos definitely weren't known on a global level, and Drake actually hopped on one of their first records, Versace, which took them out of Atlanta and helped them blow up on a way bigger level. Now I say that because that song was already generating buzz within Atlanta, but having Drake on that record gave Migos the opportunity to have their first Billboard hit, their first big push into the mainstream, and gave them a wider set of eyeballs and just more motion basically to be able to drop the consistent mixtapes that they ended up dropping. He did the same thing with I Love Makonnen in 2014 with the song Tuesday, as that song was already out, it was already fully done, and Drake just basically slapped a verse on there. Makonnen didn't even know that Drake was going to remix the track until he did. But once he did, it basically just gave Makonnen an entire career, and regardless of if he fumbled it or not, he did have the opportunity to capture the mainstream. And that was all thanks to the fact that he had a massive hit on his hands with Tuesday, and that was all thanks to the fact that Drake made an appearance on the record. Drake kind of did the same thing with Fetty Wap's song My Way, but Fetty Wap had already launched himself into stardom. Drake was a bit late to the party and wanted to hop on the remix because Fetty Wap just had so much motion and so many hits that he was already pumping out. And that's really the key difference between the Drake stimulus package and the Lil Wayne stimulus package. Drake took a very different approach to how he actually did features. See, Lil Wayne would hop on an underground artist's song, destroy the verse or the hook, make the whole song his, and he never really cared to have that favor returned. Meanwhile, with Drake, it seemed like anytime he featured on a track or you feature on his track, that artist's feature benefited Drake as much as Drake's feature benefited them. For example, Drake gave rappers like Rick Ross, Future, and Meek Mill some of the biggest hits of their careers. He even gave artists like Weeknd their first introduction into the North American market. However, with guys like Future and Meek, while Drake gave them hooks and hits and features, they gave Drake culture. They gave Drake the ability to tap into the streets, to tap into Atlanta, to click up with Metro Boomin, to talk more aggressively on tracks, to use terms like started from the bottom. Like, that was a term that Future created, and Drake just took it. So yeah, while it was definitely beneficial for guys like Future to have Drake in their corner to constantly provide them mainstream hits, and it definitely introduced them to a larger audience, it also helped Drake as much as it helped them. Again, with guys like Future, he was able to tap into that Atlanta trap sound. Guys like Ross started putting Drake onto more soulful production and brought out better rapping from it. Artists like Weeknd gave Drake the ability to tap into that whole dancehall sound. So while Drake's feature on a Weeknd record was able to introduce Weeknd to North America, Drake integrating Weeknd's sound into his music was able to make it blow up on an entirely more massive international scale. So yeah, while Wayne always collaborated with unknown guys who didn't necessarily have the skill set, popularity, or fan base to where it made it mutually beneficial for Wayne to hop on their records, for Drake, it was always strategic. He always went after a sound or an artist that already had a buzz, or had a sound that he felt he could capitalize off of. And in Kendrick's disses against Drake, he made two big points. One was that Drake is a colleague, not a colonizer, and that the entire culture hates the way Drake walks, talks, acts, and everything about him. Again, it's hard to say if that's true or not. However, I would say that unlike Wayne, where his features seem more like a favor to the other artists, Drake features definitely seem like they're a mutually beneficial collaborative effort. However, that's not to say that when Kendrick says, you run to Atlanta when you need a few dollars, you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. Yeah, sure. Drake has adopted a lot of that trap production, a lot of the slang, a lot of the flows, a lot of the styles that have come from artists within Atlanta. However, he's also given some of the biggest Atlanta artists today some of their biggest hits of all time. Versace and Walk It Like I Talk It by Migos, Yes Indeed by Lil Baby, Jumpman, Life Is Good, Wait For You by Future and Drake. The list goes on, and it really begs the question, is Drake a colonizer, or has he just adopted this weird creative business model where when he thinks your sound could benefit him, he offers up his natural talents and massive mainstream appeal by giving you a hook or a verse, or in some cases like Future, an entire collaborative project, in exchange for being able to use your resources like the production team you work with, the flows that you use, the lingo that you use, the lifestyle you portray. Like, he's definitely a chameleon. But my main point that's even bigger than, asking if Drake is a colleague or a colonizer is that the Drake stimulus package has really been dead, if you want to count it technically, since like 2018. And what I mean by that is, sure, he's had a couple hits with other artists since then. He's done some features that have done very well commercially. However, the days of Drake just hopping on your record and that instantly becoming a massive hit are far behind us. Instead, we find him playing catch-up today. If you look at 2018, he had songs like Sicko Mode, which I'd argue it's his parts that are the most memorable parts of the song. That's the reason why the song was as successful as it was. Obviously, Travis also had good performances within that record. However, I don't think it would be a diamond song without Drake. Obviously, the stimulus package was in full effect on that record. If you look at Yes Indeed by Lil Baby, that song hit number 6 on Billboard. The only song before that by Lil Baby to hit the Billboard was My Dog, which hit like number 76. So just to show you how powerful the Drake stimulus package was back in 2018, Lil Baby's first charting song was at 76. His next charting song was with Drake, and it shot up all the way to number 6. The biggest stimulus he handed out in 2018 was to Blocboy Jb, where he literally created this guy's career out of thin air. He hopped on Look Alive. The song shot up to number 5 on the Billboard charts. It has hundreds of millions of streams, and there were a lot of eyes on Blocboy Jb after that song just because of how massive it was. And again, let's be real, it was only massive because of that Drake feature. Go and look at any other hit that he tried to release after that. He didn't have a single other record that even hit 1% of the success that Look Alive with Drake hit. And while back then it seemed more like Drake would try to leverage the sound of the other artists he was featuring on the record with, to create a collision of sounds where he would incorporate his own style into the soundscape of the artist that he was collaborating with. For example, Look Alive with Blocboy Jb featured production that carried a signature Memphis sound. That wasn't something Drake was used to rapping on, but he brought a bouncy, energetic flow to create that catchy hook, and that was really the standout of the track and really meshed well with the different flows that Blocboy Jb was using on that record. But you fast forward to after 2018, and that's not the same strategy he's using. See, he's still collaborating with newer artists like Yeet, Sexy Red, Tizo Touchdown, but none of these artists owe their success to Drake, where you can make the argument that guys like Blocboy Jb, Makonnen, or even Migos got their first big mainstream look from having a record with Drake. It seems like these days Drake always shows up late to the party collaborating with these newer artists when they've already blown up or had a couple hits under their belt. And B, the songs that they have with Drake aren't the ones that catapult them into that next level of superstardom. I would argue songs like Pound Town or Get It Sexy have done more for Sexy Red's career than Rich Baby Daddy. Meanwhile, at the time that Drake hopped on Yes Indeed by Lil Baby, that song single-handedly changed his entire career more than any record did in the past for Lil Baby. And finally, while it seemed like when Drake used to hop on your song back in the day, it was Drake featuring Drake, as in he dominated the whole song, his presence just controlled all of the excitement within the record, his part was the most special of the whole song. Either he had the most memorable verse or the most memorable hook, or both. It now seems like he's not bringing anything special to any of the features that he's a part of. It seems like he's trying to enter the world of the artist that he's working with. And this is not just on his features, it's also on his own albums. I realized this on Dark Lane demo tapes. He had a song with Fabio Foreign, it literally sounded like a Fabio Foreign song with Drake doing his best Fabio Foreign impression. He had a song with Playboi Carti on that album, and it was the same thing. It was a Pureborn beat, he was using Playboi Carti's signature flows, and the whole vibe of the record just sounded like a Carti track. And this only kept getting worse and worse. On albums like CLB, he had tracks like Knife Talk, which again literally just sounded like a 21 Savage track. Same thing with Way Too Sexy, that just sounded like a Future record. Drake didn't add anything special to that song. And at the same time as he's dropping these albums, none of the features that he's doing are nearly as massive as any of the records that he dropped in the 2010s decade. Like, I want you to think long and hard of the last #1 smash hit that you remember that featured Drake. I'm not talking about a Drake record that was a massive smash hit. Obviously, he's had hits this decade. I'm saying, what song was he featured on that was a massive #1 single? To me, the last time I remember the Drake stimulus package working was in 2020 when he featured on Future's record, Life Is Good. Like, I feel like that song would not be a hit without Drake's part. But even his record in 2022 with Future called Wait For You, that song was a smash hit, but that was just because of the memorable hook from Thames. I think with or without Drake's verse on that record, it would have been a hit no matter what. Drake's verse didn't contribute that much to the song. And again, aside from that, I can't remember the last time that Drake hopped on a feature, whether it was for a new artist or an already known artist, and made that song a hit, just based off his part of the song. But he definitely kept that strategy of using the mutually beneficial formula where he would hop on your record, you would hop on his, and he took this to another level with 21 Savage. In 2022, the two artists dropped Her Loss, the collaboration project, which came off the heels of Drake dropping his critically hated dance album, Honestly Nevermind. Again, this project was definitely mutually beneficial for both artists. It gave 21 Savage a massive mainstream look, it gave him some huge hits with Rich Flex, but I would argue it helped Drake out even more, because this was technically like his comeback album, right? People hated his dance album, Honestly Nevermind. It didn't sell that well, and it was kind of looking a little bit dark for Drake. And having a guy like 21 Savage on an entire album with him helped give him that stamina to bring the energy he needed on the type of soundscapes and production that he needed to show the world that he could still come with bangers. But even by giving 21 Savage a whole album worth of material, it's not like Drake took Savage's career to crazy new heights the way that he maybe took Future's career or Rick Ross's career. Now, that might be a hot take because these two artists, before they started working with Drake, were already pretty established. However, if you go look at their Billboard charting history, nearly all of their top 10 hits come from records with Drake. If you look at Rick Ross's footage from concerts today in 2024, the crowd is singing the Drake hooks that are on Rick Ross's records word for word, loudly as hell. Rick Ross has no choice but to perform Drake records even though he's beefing with Drake just because of how many hits he has with Drake within his catalog. And it's the same thing with Future. Aside from songs like Mask Off or Like That with Kendrick Lamar, all of his biggest mainstream hits come from records with Drake. Drake took him on tour very early on, introducing him to a whole new set of eyeballs. And yeah, their collaborations were mutually beneficial, but I would say Future benefited a lot more from the Drake feature early on than 21 Savage benefited from the Drake feature. Because I don't think Drake is in the same form that he was in maybe back in 2015 when he was constantly lacing Future with various features and collaborations. And I think he's in a much weaker form today. Therefore, all those features that he laces 21 Savage with won't have that same staying power that a record like Jumpman or Diamonds Dancing or Scholarships or Where You At or Life is Good or whatever the hell feature that he gave Future back in the day. See, to even bring this point out further, I think J. Cole right now is in his top form, at least as a feature artist. And I think he did more for 21 Savage's career than Drake did for 21 Savage's career. When J. Cole hopped on the 21 Savage song a lot back in 2018, I would argue that's what separated Savage from his freshman peers like Yachty, Uzi, Kodak, and all the other mumble rappers that he was kind of put in this box with. It was songs like A Lot and My Life with J. Cole where 21 Savage was able to showcase his lyrical versatility and dive into more serious subject matter. And with J. Cole also coming in with incredible performances on those records, I think they will stand the test of time as more pivotal records within 21's career versus something like a Rich Flex with Drake. And listen, this is just my opinion, but I think at this point in Drake's career, forget the beef aside, I feel like he's in this rough spot where he's trying to connect with the youth very desperately, and he constantly finds himself playing catch up and trying to enter the world of whichever artist he is featuring with. Whereas back in the day, he brought his more signature sound to whatever feature he was doing, and that's why it sounded like Drake featuring Drake. Whereas today, it kind of sounds like Sexy Red featuring Drake, or Yeet, or Playboi Carti featuring Drake. So I think the Drake stimulus package is dead for all those reasons, and the most important one being that he's really just trying to play catch up with what's hot today, with what the youth is listening to, and for that reason, it comes across as inauthentic. Almost like my grandfather trying to show me something on Instagram. Odds are we've seen it all before, or it just doesn't hit the way that you think it does. So yeah, Drake, you're basically a grandfather right now, and if I could offer you any bit of advice, it would be to go back to the sound that people love you for. Make those records Drake featuring Drake by just doing you, doing that signature dark, melodic, moody R&B sound, and bring back the hooks. I can't remember the last good hook I heard from Drake. I want another No Lie. I want another Ashton Martin music. How did he come up with hooks like I'm On One by DJ Khaled and never be able to repeat that same level of quality ever again? Doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I would even take a Life is Good level hook. Like, just sound like you're putting some sort of effort back in the music again. Because to me, it sounds lazy, uninspired, sounds like you're chasing the youth, and you won't be able to dominate a track if you're trying to replicate what's hot. But what do you guys think? Do you think the Drake stimulus package is dead? When do you think the next time Drake will have a #1 Billboard charting feature? Do you think he's a colonizer like Kendrick said, and he just preys on the culture and sound of Atlanta and juices it whenever he wants a quick hit? Or is it more like Young Thug said when he said that, Drake has done more for him in his whole career than a guy like Kanye has? Or he said like Drake is the artist who did the most for him in his entire career. Basically, he just said Drake is very selfless with the amount of features that he gives out to the artists that he likes. And I think that's true, but there might be an ulterior motive to it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you want to see next. Drop a little subscription if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you guys in the next one.